Well, education departments are scrambling to find replacements for hundreds of matric exam markers who've pulled out at the last minute. The second wave of the coronavirus pandemic has resulted in markers withdrawing because they're ill, have been exposed to or a positive person, or have cited fear of exposure. In Gauteng alone, close to 900 markers didn't show up, and it's estimated that the figure for the Eastern Cape is around 265. Let's discuss this further. We're now joined via Zoom by Basil Manuel, who's the Executive Director of Naptosa. Very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you for joining us here on SABC News this afternoon.
Absolute pleasure to be with you. Good afternoon.
Let's talk about just how much of an impact this second wave has had on the markers and ultimately the marking process, really. Do you know of any contingency plans? I mean, we've heard the Department of Basic Education saying they're getting more people in than what is needed. But let's talk about more contingency measures in place just in case there is a place that is completely, that can't be used at all. And also, are any of your members part of this big group who've decided not to take part, and not mark, not show up for the marking process?
Yes, of course. Let's first talk about the contingencies. One of the obvious contingencies is the substitute list. It has always been a practice to have a substitute list, but also that list is exhaustible. And the problem lies in when it is exhausted, to find additional markers becomes a huge problem, because the substitute list can only be made up of those who qualified in terms of meeting all the criteria. And you don't want to go and start looking for people who did not meet the basic criteria. And yes, members of ours are part of the group that didn't pitch for various reasons. Themselves having had people pass on, alternatively falling ill, alternatively being in touch, or just fear itself.
Yeah.
What we have said to our members is prioritize your health and safety, then prioritize everybody else's. Because if you look after yourself, you automatically look after the bigger group. And that is the way we've proceeded with the entire story.
Yeah. Mr. Manuel, what additional safety measures do you think would have been needed or need to be put in place to satisfy yourselves as Naptosa and certainly your members too? I mean, it does seem that you are supporting them, those who've cited adequate reasons as to why they didn't show up. What would satisfy you at this point? Because it does seem from the department that they believe that they've done all that's needed, all that's required from their side. What else would you want?
Let's first acknowledge that fear is real.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what informs it. And if people are fearful and they don't pitch, there's nothing we can do about that, because they've had experiences that we don't know about in their communities, in their families, etc. I think all the health protocols that can be put in place are there. We certainly have only had 2 or 3 complaints from 85 centres where people were a little twitchy about little things such as the toilets are not being cleaned as regularly as we would like. We've addressed that.
Yeah.
Alternatively, the teas. People don't seem to be social distancing as they should, and the biscuits are not individually wrapped, and everybody's dipping their hands into the same serving dish. And that we drew to the attention of the authorities, and that was dealt with. So I think everything is being done, but there are all these unknown factors. And one of the issues that we know we could not resolve, even though we put it on the table, was the issue of residential marking, where the markers live on the premises as they've done for many years. We've had the majority of markers staying in the hostels, etc. But now we've had to social distance, and the old type of hostel didn't work as well as it did. So more markers are traveling either to relatives or friends close to the marking center, or they're traveling back home. That becomes a big risk factor, because they are then in touch with many, many more people, and themselves they can bring back an infection into the marking center without even knowing it. And those are the unknowns that we cannot really solve, because there is no ready solution. The fact that we have many more marking centers is a good thing, because we have fewer people there on site, and fewer people means that stricter controls can be done. However, there are many unknowns. If we have a sporadic infection and we've exhausted our lists of substitutes, then of course it will spell a problem. We live in eternal hope that that doesn't happen, but of course it's only hope that we are working with at the moment.
Yeah. Is there concern from your side, specifically from your members, about the impact that, you know, maybe further delays in marking might have? I mean, that might essentially mean the further delay of releasing matric results, which then, then we're talking about a domino effect in that sense, really, because then it becomes an issue about those who would be starting tertiary education, the delays there. It becomes a bit of a problem that as I say, just becomes really like a domino. Is there concern from yourselves and your members in terms of trying to get this process really sort of done, marking those papers, apart from, of course, with the important issue of COVID-19 it's huge, but also let's talk about the learners, the matric learners who anxiously obviously will be waiting for those matric results to use them further for whether it's tertiary or whatever they want to use them for.
Let me first start with tertiary education. We know that universities have all set their dates back by a large margin for 2021. So there is no danger of that being impacted on, and people don't need to worry unnecessarily.
Yeah.
However, if we have an inordinate delay in marking, it will have a knock-on effect on the academic year, the school academic year. And we hope that, in fact, that won't happen. But if we have sporadic infections and we don't get marking done, remember these are people that are teachers in schools. And between the 22nd and the 25th, when teachers have to report, there are only 3 days. And that could be a problem. At the moment, we sincerely hope that given all the protocols in place, that we won't cross that bridge. But that eventuality is always there, particularly in our hotspot areas, where we have seen infections rise dramatically. We ourselves have seen members passing away or relatives of members passing away, and that has been very, very traumatic for everybody, and that impacts on the people who are in the marking centers themselves. So yes, there are concerns, but we don't want to be alarmist. And that is why we are watching what is happening. We are talking to the appropriate authorities. And of course, we are also thinking about the what ifs, because we can't only look at what is happening without thinking beyond the immediate. So I want to assure the people that there's a lot of talking going on. At the moment, things seem to be running smoothly, and we hope to maintain that. And if the pace is maintained as it is now, we will finish on time.
All right. Mr. Basil Manuel, thank you once again for joining us here on SABC News this afternoon. We appreciate your time.
Pleasure.